Alright, hey YouTube, so if you're confused about training frequency and how often you should train each muscle, today I'm going to simplify that for you. So, first of all, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Faz, this is Fazlifts. I release educational content on the topic of getting jacked and strong every week, twice a week. So subscribe if you like what you see. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much. Appreciate your support. You guys have been amazing recently, so thank you so much for that. And do hit like, comment, and hit the bell notification on your subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And one final thing before we get on with the video, if you want personalized coaching, there's a link in the description. Get in touch and let's talk. So first of all, let's provide some context for this discussion. Now, today I want to give you the benefit of my experience, not only of my own training as a 26-year veteran of the gym and of 3 different strength sports, but also of a coach of 11 years. Now, from my perspective, frequency is quite a hot topic at the moment. It's something which gets talked about a lot, and we are seeing a rise in higher frequencies with lower volume. Overall, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think some of the messages are getting a little bit dogmatic, and I want to just provide some balance into the space with my experience. So I think you have to have a balance of frequency, volume, and intensity, and many different combinations can work. Understanding that is key to making things work, and it's also why you hear so many different voices in the space. Some people are promoting high frequencies, some people are promoting lower frequencies, and everything in between. So hopefully today I can give you a bit more context into all the voices out there and tell you what I promote and what worked best for me. So I think if you go too frequently, you get incomplete recovery. And I'm going to speak a bit about the different recovery factors that are involved in the body over the course of this video to hopefully illustrate why some of this is quite individualistic and you can't always rely on studies. On the other side of the coin, if you're training too infrequently, well, you might not get enough stimulus to actually grow. So there is a Goldilocks zone of just getting that right. Now, to begin the discussion, I want to talk about some individual factors. Okay, there's a lot that is said about physiology and studies, and I want to just provide you with some more individual factors which actually I've not seen anybody discuss yet, except for me. I want you to think about recovery in this way, right? Think about it in this way. There are 4 areas of the body which get affected by hard training. Those are your muscles, your joints and connective tissues, your nervous system, and the bones. Those all get affected. So let's start with muscles. Like, muscles recover the fastest. Pretty much a muscle in some people, like more advanced guys, can be recovered within 24 hours. It's that quick, you know. You may be good to go again in terms of muscles in as short as 24 hours. Now, next along is connective tissues and joints. They take longer. So when you think of recovery, you're really looking at the recovery of the joints and connective tissues, because that's going to be your biggest limiting factor. Joints typically take a little bit longer to recover, and I think the difference is exacerbated by age, by training age, but also how you train as well. And that is going to provide some clarity into some of the modern recommendations of very high intensity, high frequency training, which you guys probably see online. That will help you guys to make more sense of it. And also explain why some of those guys are getting a little bit dogmatic for my liking. Next up is the nervous system. Now, nervous system recovery is more dependent on repeated activities. So if you're squatting hard every time you go to the gym, that's going to be a problem. It's not just a problem for connective tissues, but it might also be a problem for just the squat movement pattern as a whole. So nervous system, if you're bodybuilding, shouldn't be a problem as long as you're adhering to correct bodybuilding routine parameters. You know, if you're doing powerlifting, there needs to be more of a thought around how you program, so you're not doing excessive frequency on the same lift, because in powerlifting you're rewarded by getting stronger on the main lifts. If you insist on doing the main lifts over and over again, that can be a problem. So that's one of the reasons why popular powerlifting programs will use variations if they're using higher frequencies. And as I say, finally, bones, you don't really need to be worried about those. So those are 4 factors which it would be wise for you guys to think about when we're framing this discussion. It'll help you make a bit more sense of what I'm saying in the video, but also of what you see on social media. Now, the next thing is individual factors do matter. Just anecdotally speaking, all right, I've seen the hard gainer type. So you're more frail, harder to put on muscle, typically because their joints can't take the amount of stress they need for prolonged growth periods. If you are a hard gainer type person and your joints are quite small or quite frail, you're not going to be able to exact as much punishment on your muscles to make the growth stimulus last for long enough to take advantage of a bro split or even twice a week training. This is one of the reasons why the bro split doesn't work that well for hard gainer types. Like, it's great for recovery. You'll feel okay. You might feel more recovered, but it's not a good strategy if you are somebody who struggles with putting on muscle and strength. I class myself in that category, and traditionally speaking, I've always gotten better results by hitting body parts more frequently. So something to bear in mind, the more kind of Viking build, easy gainer types, your traditional chads and jocks, those are the guys who typically do better with lower frequencies, either twice a week training, every 5 days, even once a week. So we're starting to see the irony of social media. Typically, who do you see as influencers? Yeah, you see the most genetically gifted jocks normally, your pro bodybuilders. So for those guys, generally speaking, they can get away with slightly less frequency. Traditionally, bodybuilders have done lower frequencies, unless you go back to the silver era where there were higher frequencies. But you think of, as the sport got more and more popular, who were the predominantly large voices? They were your Sean Rays, your Flex Wheelers, all those guys who were training body parts in a bro split kind of manner. So what I'm saying is individual factors count. And in my experience, the worse you are in that sort of genetic pile, more than likely the more frequency you actually need. The better off you are, you can probably get away with less frequency, usually because you're more robust enough to deliver a good stimulus which will last you for the duration of half a week, a full week, or whatever. And on top of that, you also have the factor of drugs. I've seen gender differences too. So typically speaking, females also fall on that spectrum where they are lighter boned, and generally speaking, females respond better to higher frequencies. Now, the trick is, it's not just a case of hard gainer types training more often. You need to be intelligent with your approach. This is one of the reasons why my wizard routine works so well for a lot of people online, because they are genetically typical and they're looking for something different, and it works well for them because you have a frequent routine with a lot of variety, and that is generally the more optimal approach for somebody who is a hard gainer type. By the way, on this note, as a quick segue, I want to just clarify what hard gainer means. I will do a separate video on this at some point because a lot of people are confused about the term hard gainer. So hard gainer does not mean you struggle to eat. Okay, that you can have fat hard gainers as well. I know that's what the industry says, but the industry is wrong. I'm right. The traditional view of hard gainers was people who struggle to put on strength and muscle. It's not people who struggle to eat. That's just having a poor appetite. We already have a term for that. So get that out of your head. Hard gainers are not guys with poor appetites. Hard gainers, once again, and for clarity, they are people who struggle to put on size and strength from day one. So I'm speaking to those people. So I'm just going to end with this section by saying the human experience is key. All right. Frequency is not a one size fits all. There is a growing trend on social media to discount people's feelings for studies. And I think that's a dangerous trend. And I know where this is coming from. I know there is a recent trend towards science-based lifting and physiology-based lifting, which ignores the human experience. Now, that is the problem traditionally with science-based lifters. And the antidote to that traditionally has been evidence-based lifters. But evidence-based, as we've seen over the last 10 years, has its own problems. So ultimately, I am a results-based coach, and that's how I classify myself. Both science-based and evidence-based both have their problems. Now, let's talk about actually optimal training frequency. Let's give you guys some guidelines. And I want to just simplify this. So for a beginner, typically speaking, doesn't matter. All right. Beginners can train on Monday. They can leave it a whole week and they'll come back next Monday and be stronger, because typically for a beginner, the stimulus is so strong, they can come back a week later and still be fine. So for a ranked beginner, a bro split would work or a push-pull legs would work fine. However, that's not the best way, because they can also benefit from training a body part on Monday and coming back on Wednesday and being stronger. It's that simple. There are other ways of messing up beginner training, but the frequency aspect of training as a beginner is just extremely easy. Quite literally, it doesn't matter. You just don't get the nervous system problems that you do as you're more advanced. You don't get the joint problems because you're not lifting very much weight. So for beginners, this is one of the reasons why they say training is very easy. Frequency literally doesn't matter. You can go wrong as a beginner, but it's not going to be with frequency. Anyway, moving on to intermediates. Generally speaking, you're going to be looking at actually needing to think about frequency. So you're looking at higher frequency. Now, of course, this has to be individualized, like I spoke about in the first section, but generally speaking for intermediates, you're looking at a frequency of between 2 and 3 times a week per body part, per muscle. Now, for advanced guys, this doesn't change. The only thing that changes for advanced guys would be the volume and the intensity. That's all. Intermediates are classified as people who usually need the most, like the most of everything. The most volume they can get away with, the most frequency they can get away with, the most intensity they can get away with, because they are always limited. But actively, they're trying to do as much as possible because you're going to be limited. I would still recommend intermediates do a high amount of volume within the confines of what is sensible. All right, so I'm not saying 20 plus sets for intermediate. I don't agree with that. My personal recommendation, as you guys should know, if you watch my channel, is 6 to 16 sets per muscle per week. Intermediates are the guys who are on the high end of that. All right. So if you're an intermediate, that is where you would be doing up to 16 sets per muscle per week. And yeah, again, frequency starts to matter at this stage. Intensity, you're always going to be limited. Intermediates, typically speaking, are not able to generate a huge level of intensity, not like their advanced counterparts. So typically speaking for an intermediate, it is dangerous advice to tell an intermediate to hold back. If you're an intermediate, go all out. In your head, go all out, because typically speaking, you're not going to be all out. You still have a motor unit recruitment deficit, which will get better over time, but you don't want to limit yourself at the intermediate stage. Now, for the advanced guys, frequency again doesn't really change. You're still training 2 or 3 times a week, whatever is individually suited to you, and then you just simply match the volume and the intensity to suit. Typically speaking, for advanced guys, they're going to need less overall volume. This is where volume actually comes down, because your ability to recruit high-level motor units will be better. You're just better at lifting. You're better at lifting, internally, but you're also better externally as well. You're more focused on what you're doing. So overall, the stimulus that you do in the gym will be of higher quality. So practically speaking, you'll need less volume. I also recommend, by the way, for advanced guys, short periods of high volume training can be very useful. So to give you a bit of a historical context, if you disagree with the whole idea about higher frequencies, you look at the silver era lifters of the natural era, 40s and 50s, they all train with high frequencies. I guarantee you are not bigger and stronger than Reg Park. I guarantee you're not stronger than Tommy Kono. I guarantee you're not more of a Chad than Steve Reeves, right? So this idea that higher frequencies is only suitable for beginners really needs to go away. And just as a personal anecdotal thought, try not to offend anyone, any other coaches out there, but I often think coaches who recommend bro splits do so because simply programming higher frequencies is complicated. I'm just saying, that's what I've observed. There are a lot of shit coaches out there, and the bro split is super easy to program. Just do one body part a day, go nuts. Congratulations. You can do better, but it requires thought and knowledge and experience. So next, let's go on to how to assess your own frequency, all right? And then what I'll do is I'll just do a quick recap at the end to make sure we're all on the same page. So I would say if right now you're getting no progress and you're also not really getting any aches and pains, so you're not sore, you're fresh, but you're making no progress, you likely need more frequency or more intensity. That's how I think about things. If you're stalled, you're plateaued completely, but you're also not particularly sore or beat up, you probably need more. So I would up your frequency, but if your frequency is already high, 2 or 3 times a week, then increase your intensity. Now, the next scenario is if you're getting no progress, but you're always sore. Let's say you're just beat up, you're in pain, you're run down, whether that's in the gym or in life, whatever it is, because stress is stress, right? Then I would say reduce the frequency or the volume. Probably start with the volume first, and you'll start to grow again. At least start to get rid of some aches and pains. And finally, the best scenario, if you're making good progress and you're minimally sore, remember, you're never going to feel perfect, right? Lifting is hard, right? But if you're making consistent progress and you're minimally sore, great. It's perfect balance. Don't change, okay? Don't care what anybody else says. Don't care what I say. Remember, your only loyalty is to your results, all right? That's the perfect scenario. Right, guys, I'm going to end with a quick recap. So a quick summary. When it comes to frequency, individual factors reign supreme. So how you are built, how you respond will usually dictate what frequency you gravitate towards. More hard gainer types, the worse you are on the genetic scale, the better you probably respond to higher frequencies, from what I've seen. And when it comes to the guys who are a little bit more perhaps genetically average, maybe on the more gifted scale, they probably do okay with less frequency. But even for those guys, they're still looking at training twice a week, maybe a body part every 5 days or once a week, not anything too low. Generally speaking, it's those easy gainer, thickly built, robust guys who are the poster childs for your bro split. And the next thing to bear in mind is that your training affects 4 areas. It's not just about your muscle recovery. It's muscles, joints, nervous system, and bones. Now, the joints are the big issue, and it's what doesn't get a lot of conversation, because the older you get, the more training years you have, and again, the more of a hard gainer you are, and perhaps the more injuries you've picked up, mandates that you need to take that into account when you're looking at frequency and you're looking at volume and intensity. So, if somebody's telling you, hey, I don't care about how you feel about high frequency, or I don't care how you feel about higher reps or low reps, the studies say this, and that's something I've heard a lot on social media recently, you're perfectly entitled to ignore them. It doesn't mean you're not science-based, okay? The human experience is vital. You have to take that into account. If you've gotten the best results your whole life of training reps higher than 8 and frequencies of 2 or 3 times a week, but somebody's out there telling you, hey, you want to train with low reps all the time because the science says this, just ignore them, okay? The human individual experience is crucial. Your only loyalty is to your results. Right, guys, I hope that was useful. I hope it provided some clarity in what is a very confusing space at the moment when it comes to frequency. So yeah, hope that was useful. And if you are interested in coaching, there's a link in the description. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you for tuning in. If you're still here at this point, boops.